Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Action Along the Gridiron. A lot to talk about today, so I'm just going to get right to it. Eagles beat the Chiefs in Super Bowl rematch 24-21 in Kansas City. Huge win for the Eagles. They improved 9-1. The Chiefs fall back to 7-3, and the Ravens take that number one first round bye, first seed, as that was a huge loss and a huge win for both of those teams. Really said a lot about where they stand in the power rankings. So that's huge for them. Staying in the AFC for the Chiefs side, the Broncos have now won 4 straight games as they win on Sunday Night Football against the Vikings. Huge win there too. 2 teams that were underdogs, but started to pick up the pace. The Vikings won 5 straight. The Broncos had won 3 straight. So the Broncos move up to 4. The Vikings are still a good team. They're still right there. They'll try to bounce back after that loss. Speaking of bouncing back, the 49ers, who were 6-3, who started off 6-0 and lost 3 straight games, get the win and improve back to 7-3 on the year at home. Huge win for them. The Lions improved to 8-2 for the first time since 1962. For example, JFK was the president when they were last 6-2, let alone 8-2. So long time. Good to see if you're a Detroit fan. So good for them. Texans hold a wild card spot after another win. Now 6-4, as I got the critical catch hat on for them. So that's good for all those teams. A lot going on with the power rankings and how teams are moving up, teams are moving down. Panthers get handed another loss against Dallas. That's now they're 1-9. They don't have their first round pick. That goes to the Bears. So you got to try and win every single game from now until the end of the season because you can't improve your team with that high draft pick as you normally have. So they have to try and fix that. Patriots are 2-8. The Giants get the win against Washington. They sweep them on the year. The Patriots are happy to see that. They move up on the draft rankings. And the draft rankings is a complicated thing because second overall picks are usually better than first overall picks. And it's proven. Lawrence Taylor, who went to the Giants, who was a Hall of Famer, won the Super Bowl twice. He was the second overall pick. And he was way better than the first overall pick. Megatron, Calvin Johnson, he was a second overall pick, and he was better than the first overall pick. So it doesn't really matter. You don't really need the first overall pick. A more recent example, C.J. Stroud is a whole lot better than Bryce Young right off the bat. Really struggling for Young. I mean, he is young. He has time to improve over the offseason, over the rest of the year, but he's got to do that now. You can't do this again next year. That'd be like a Jack Rosen type of deal, and then somebody's going to take your spot. And that's just how the NFL is. If you draft a quarterback, or really any position that was high overall, high rankings, high expectations, and they're not there, you got to get rid of them. You can't hold on to them forever. Speaking of that, New York, the Jets, the Giants, you have to split it. You have to split the road. If you still believe that Daniel Jones or Zach Wilson is your guy in the future, work on him. Get aspects around him. Get him players that he could throw to and build your team. Instead, if you don't think that they're the guy, draft another guy and cut them or make them a backup. I saw the Jets doing that. We all saw the Jets doing that in the beginning of the year by signing Aaron Rodgers. He got hurt, and Zach Wilson still wasn't ready. So, you got to move on. You got to either move on or you got to get assets around him so that he can throw to them. And when he can't throw the ball, he can run the ball. You know what I mean? And get a good playbook going and go from there. Because really, that's what the game is about. You don't have to go to Alabama. You don't have to go to Georgia. You don't have to go to Tennessee. for the SEC. You don't have to go to North Carolina or Clemson or LSU. Like, you don't have to go to a big school to be good. Like, the Chiefs were not great before Patrick Mahomes. They weren't. They didn't have very winning seasons with Alex Smith, and why they ended up moving on from him. They were a decent team, but not nearly as good as they are right now. They went out and they drafted, at that time, nobody knew who he was out of Texas Tech, and they worked around him. They gave him an offense. They gave him Kelsey. They know they just lost last night, but they gave him all these players to build around, let alone they also worked on him. Because if you have all this talent around you and you're still not doing anything, maybe it's the quarterback. Not always. Huge example is, the Chargers have a losing record right now, and it's not their quarterback. They're just not, chemistry is a huge thing, and they're not clicking right now in chemistry. They had a huge drop at the end of the game by Quentin Williams. But really what it's about right now is finding what's wrong with your team, because you're not always going to have the same problem. Not every team has the same problem. For instance, the Giants had 6 turnovers on Sunday. You're telling me that, their whole team's bad? No. It's obviously the offense. It's obviously whoever's calling the plays. It's little pieces that pay big damage. It's not just one big piece playing the little damage or the big damage. It's the whole offense. And in that case, that team, that is the whole offense. The Steelers lost to the Browns. Browns moved to 7-3. That's a huge example again. They've, right after they lose that game, Tuesday, the 21st, today, the Steelers fire Matt Canada, their offensive coordinator. So, they thought he was the problem. They think he's the problem. They got rid of him. Now let's see where they go in the future, because it's not like it's the end of the world. You have to be better next year. You have to rethink it and redo everything and build your way back up. For instance, the Lions 3 years ago were 3-13-1. That's how they finished their year. Last year they finished 8-9. This year they already have as many wins as they had last year now. So it's not about, throwing in the towel, giving up. It's about, what is your problem? How do we fix it? So let's see if those teams do that. Because you're not always going to have a losing season. You're not always going to have a winning season unless you do it right. And when you find how to do it right, then you build off of that. The Eagles, huge example too. They, Carson Wentz wasn't their guy. They drafted Jalen Hurts as a Taysom Hill type of deal, giving them the ball for a read option, or maybe have him play like tight end like Taysom Hill does, a couple plays. But then they were like, this is our guy. Jalen Hurts is our guy. They found that out by a 5th round pick or 4th round pick. Jalen Hurts was not drafted high, and you don't have to be drafted high to be able to be a good player in this game. So that's what's great about football, because it's not always predictable. It's really never predictable. For instance, the Chargers have had a better year in some ways than the Texans, in some ways than the Saints, and they have as good of or worse of a record than those teams. So it's, and that doesn't, what I just said doesn't matter. You got to win. A win is a win. And the Texans are better than the Chargers. But you have to be like, we're right there. Because some teams can't say that they're right there. Like the Panthers, you won 1 game. You can't say that you're like close to figuring out how to win games. You got to get back in the room with your guys, go over all the problems, and try to fix them one by one. And I'm not saying get rid of your entire team. You have veteran voices, like I've talked about this whole time we've had this YouTube channel, having a veteran voice. Adam Thielen has been a really good wide receiver for the Panthers, and finding the rough spots is easy because everybody will point them out to you. But you got to find the good in the bad and fix on the bad with the good, if that makes any sense. So that's what's going on with all those teams right now. Big games coming up on Thanksgiving. Hopefully everybody enjoys the holiday. Thanks for all the support as always. Instagram is action_along_the_gridiron, where I got the YouTube link right in there. And also I came out with a Shopify for merchandise. Go and support that. Thanks for all the support as always. Huge games coming up on Thanksgiving. 4 straight days of football. Michigan hosting Ohio State. Some big rivalry games, and it's really cool that college plans those rivalry games right after Thanksgiving because you're enjoying the leftovers, watching some teams go at it that really hate each other. Michigan, Ohio State, like I said, Oregon State, FSU, Florida, Alabama, Auburn, just to give you a couple and throw them at you right there. So that's about it for now. And as always,